So hit it.
Hello and welcome to This is the Place Sports, the podcast. It's Sunday afternoon, and I can't think of anyone I'd rather spend a Sunday afternoon with than Parker Van Dyke and Brad Rock, our two guests today. Would you agree?
I agree. We're glad to have both you guys. They both accepted the invitations on extremely short notice.
As typical, as is typical with our booking process.
You know, but they're very flexible guys, so we appreciate it. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is the Play Sports podcast. This week, our four quarters are going to center mostly around basketball. And let's start with the first quarter, and let's talk about the death of Mark Eaton. That was unexpected and a big loss. And Brad, I know you're very familiar with Mark Eaton.
I was. I mean, I met him in 1990 when he played for the Jazz, my first year as a beat writer. And, you know, somebody said he never developed an attitude. I mean, all those years that he played, you wouldn't know that he was an NBA player, that he was a celebrity. He handled it all pretty well. I mean, I saw Lee Benson's column on him, and he would horse ride with one of our photographers, Tom Smart, and he would bike ride with Lee Benson. And I don't know a lot of NBA players that are just gonna, even after their careers, are gonna hang out with media people. So that's who he was. He wasn't impressed with celebrity.
Right. He's a down-to-earth guy. Chose to stay here in the state of Utah after his NBA career, which is kind of unusual too, Brad. He really became kind of a man of the community, owning restaurants and such. And from what I understand, he never said no to an autograph or a picture opportunity.
Yeah, I never saw him do it. It's kind of interesting to me to stay around. This might be a little off subject, but I do remember him one time telling me, it's interesting when you stay around as a retired player. And it's not like he would hide in Los Angeles, but some of the players go back to LA and big cities because celebrities aren't unusual. So they actually maybe can find more anonymity in a larger market. But he did say, Brad, and he was pretty gentle about it. He said, I go to the gas station, and invariably somebody is going to say, how's the weather up there? And I think that's the first, and he said, you go to the grocery store, and, he said, people in line are checking out what's in your food basket, wondering, wow, what does Mark Eaton eat? He handled it as gracefully as
lots of vegetables.
Yeah, he did. He handled it as gracefully.
Peanut M&Ms too. Peanut M&Ms.
Yeah, I mean, there's something superhuman about him. If he didn't have a bag of M&Ms in that shopping cart, possibly you lose respect. I don't know.
Right.
Years ago, I saw him. It was at the Fred Meyer up on 33rd, 39th South, and Mark Eaton was there. And there was a buzz before I even went in the store. People were going, Mark Eaton's shopping at Fred Meyer. Mark Eaton's in there. And it was kind of funny. And, you go in there and he's bigger than life. Parker, you little young when he was playing for the Jazz, obviously, if at all. But what are your thoughts on Mark Eaton? Because I know you're a big Jazz fan, and he was obviously two-time Defensive Player of the Year, and he made quite an impact for a guy who was originally destined to be an auto mechanic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, I wasn't even born when Mark Eaton was playing. And I think as a 7'4" guy, there's no hiding no matter where you are. So whether he's, wherever he was, I think he was going to stand out. And so from everything I've heard from people that knew him and interacted with him, is they just defined him as a gentle giant, as a guy who was here for the community. The moment he was with the Jazz, he was all about the community here. And I don't think I realized how much of an impact he still had with the Jazz, even after his retirement. And so I thank him for that. And his relationship with Rudy Gobert and with the current team. And he's definitely one of the foundational Utah Jazz players that built the organization into what it is today. I mean, we think of Stockton and Malone, obviously, and Jerry Sloan, and Mark Eaton's one of those pieces that brought us to where we are now and really paved the way for some great success in the 90s and then in today. I think back to 1988, also before my time, but when the Jazz went on the road and beat the Lakers, the Showtime Lakers in the playoffs, the Jazz ended up losing that series, but that was a key moment in the Jazz progression towards the top of the league. And Mark Eaton was a big part of those teams. And so just too soon. And it's sad, but he definitely left his mark on our state.
Hey, Brad, if the Jazz had Mark Eaton instead of Greg Ostertag as their center when they went to the NBA Finals, would there be a trophy in Salt Lake City?
I definitely think so. I don't think there'd be two. The first time the Jazz played them, they were really good. The second time, Steve Kerr has since said they were going on fumes. I think Pippen had a bad back or something, and they weren't they weren't doing they weren't unstoppable. But Michael Jordan willed them the championship. But I just think Greg Ostertag or Mark altered the game so much. I think he could have made that different. I mean, they were close in all those games. So yeah, I'm gonna go on record forever saying they could have one. Probably not two, but they could have had one, and I think they would have had one if Mark. Everything else being the same, if Mark had been there.
Austin, you're a student of the Jazz and that.
Yes.
How much do you think he helped Rudy Gobert?
I mean, a lot. I mean, I think that's something that's been very well documented in the local media and even on a national scale. Rudy Gobert and Mark Eaton would often go on the bike rides together, which is unfortunately how Mark Eaton passed. But I think the life of like a 7-footer is probably pretty difficult. Just getting stares like all day, and the life outside of basketball when you're that big is probably very uncomfortable. And to have someone in the community that could empathize with, that kind of weird lifestyle of like getting in like insanely expensive custom clothes and like shoes that like are so big they'd make your head explode. Like, I think that's been really big for Rudy Gobert and him being happy in Utah. And obviously, his tribute that he posted on social media, made it really clear that he really loved Mark Eaton a lot.
Brad, we obviously heard from people like Frank Layden and others who played with him expressing their sorrow in that. How would you sum up the death of Mark Eaton?
Well, I agree with Austin. I can't believe it. I saw Mark 3 weeks before he passed, and I was on an airport shuttle, and we were going to Los Angeles, and Mark got on, and wasn't hard to tell it was him. And when Mark got on, we talked about him going on a fishing trip up to Montana, and that's the guy you could talk to. Was the guy that was going on a fishing trip, not the guy that was a celebrity. And it was really good to see him. But if I had to sum Mark up, I would say he was the genuine article. He never lost track of who he was. He treated everybody with respect. And that's not easy to do when people ask a lot of you. You've been around him, Austin, Dirk. When you're around celebrities, you start to kind of sympathize a little bit with them because you realize that if they show too much humanity, people are going to just keep taking. You know what I mean? If you sign an autograph while they interrupt your dinner, then you've got 30 people wanting to interrupt your dinner. And how he balanced that really summarized it. Can I just say one more thing about Mark, Dirk?
Sure.
This told me about him. So one night I was covering a Jazz game in Minneapolis, and I finished up my column or my game story. I guess I was the beat writer then. And walked out to the court, and I was going to go walk back down through downtown to the hotel, but I cut across the court. So I came onto the court. I see, a few hundred kids, looked like teenagers, and I look over there, and Mark is speaking to them. So all the players had gone home. They'd gone out to clubs, or they'd gone home and gone to bed, done whatever they wanted to, and 2 hours after the game, there was Mark speaking to these youth people, and I saw a sign or something. It was a group of Christian youth kids. And that says something about him. But what I thought was interesting, these weren't junior Jazz kids. These were Timberwolves kids. And I think it'd take a lot to convince you to stay and give a speech to a bunch of kids who don't even like your team because he thought he had, something worthwhile for him. So that was Mark.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was very informative, and it's a tragic loss. It's too young, and it's really kind of rocked Jazz Nation a little bit at a time when there's a lot of excitement. So, speaking of which, Parker, let's talk about the Jazz Clippers. What's your first thoughts on that?
I'm excited. I think we all were pulling for Dallas, wanting to play Dallas in the second round, but I'm confident in our Jazz team. I do think the Clippers, when they play their best, they are probably one of the toughest, if not the one of the toughest teams to beat when Kawhi Leonard is on and the rest of the role players are on. The thing is with them is they're not on very often, or at least as of late. So if the Jazz can get up on them and kind of capitalize on their kind of a light switch where they turn it on and off, if we can capitalize on that, similar to the way Dallas did, but be able to withstand that, then I like our chances. But Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are going to be a really tough task for us defensively. But I'm excited for Tuesday night. The Memphis series ended too long ago, man. I need more Jazz playoff games.
Bring them on. Ost, how do you see the matchup? Is it did the Jazz have people that can guard Kawhi and George?
Well, I mean, the matchup that everybody is probably thrilled to see is Paul George against Joe Ingles. Obviously when Paul George is playing for Oklahoma City, he and Ingles really went at each other in that playoff series. If like something happens where Paul George like bricks his first shot and Ingles gets right in his face right from the jump, the series will be over right then. Like that'll decide the series right then. I don't think Paul George is a particularly tough player mentally. I think sometimes he struggles, getting in his own head. I'm really excited to see him and Joe Ingles on the floor together. I think that'll be key. But also things to watch where I think the Rajon Rondo Mike Conley matchup will be fun. It'll have to be like a committee effort to guard Kawhi Leonard. I think it's going to be this is the point where like it really steps up. Like this is going to be a significant level up in competition against the Clippers than it was against Memphis.
Brad, you have some great memories of the Jazz and Clippers in the playoffs. I believe you were in Los Angeles when the riots broke out one year.
Yes, I was. And that was the strangest week. They kept postponing the games. You get up in the morning, you'd meet with the PR people and, maybe get some quotes from Jerry, and they'd say, no, we're not going to play today. It's too dangerous. We're going to move it a couple days later. We're going to move it to Anaheim. We're going to do this stuff. But I would. One of our photographers really wanted to go to a Dodgers game down there when we first got down before the riots had started. I think it was Gary McKellar, and he talked me into it. I didn't really want to go, but we go to a Dodgers game, and about the sixth inning, we could see helicopters flying around, and I said, hey, somebody must have broken out of jail, and we kind of watched for a minute, and then when I can't remember whether they left early or the game was over, we got in the car and started driving back, and we're heading back to Marina Del Rey, and I see a fire off in the distance, and I said to Gary, there must be a warehouse fire or something. He goes, yeah. And then we went down in a dip, and then we came up a little bit. I could see about 6 or 7 of them. I said, something going on. We turned on the radio, and they said there is rioting going on in South Central. They said, stay in your houses, stay off the freeway, which is where we were. It was on the freeway. And then we found it was on. But you couldn't move. They closed the restaurants that closed at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Nobody wanted to be out after dark. I went over one morning. I thought, well, it might be trouble with the restaurant. So I went over to a Ralph's grocery store. It was next to our hotel there. And I walked in to see, well, I'll get a muffin or something for breakfast. The shelves were completely empty.
Wow.
They were completely empty. People had panicked. That was panic buying. They stopped flying flights out of LAX because people were shooting handguns at it. Yeah, it was scary. And by the way, the Jazz did practice. They practiced at Inglewood High School, and it had a police escort, and they bolted the doors with a chain when the Jazz went into practice. So it was It was really pretty interesting stuff.
Well, hopefully this series will be lacking in such drama. We'll see. Hopefully it's all about basketball this time. It's halftime, guys. Time to get a quick drink. I'm going to take a sip. Here we go. I'm ready for the third quarter. Let's talk about other NBA playoffs. Parker, what do you think of that other Western Conference semifinal?
So we've got the Nuggets and the Suns. I'm also a little disappointed that the Blazers didn't win. I think having Utah ties, I think a lot of Utah people really pull for Damian Lillard,
right?
To do well, and individually he's been great. I think we're thinking him and with his team to continue to move on, but I think it's going to be an interesting series. Denver is still very tough. Without two of their main players, Barton and Murray, they're still very good. And then Phoenix. The key to Phoenix is Chris. If Chris Paul can stay about 80% healthy, then that just gives them, and that makes them so much better. And so it'll be fun. It'll be another interesting series. I kind of like how this NBA season is. The last few years, there's kind of been a clear-cut favorite. Right now, in a lot of ways, it's a jump ball. And so these next few series for both the Western and the Eastern Conference are going to be really exciting because anyone can beat anyone. So it's going to be competitive. They've got some great young stars who haven't really been in that situation before. So looking forward to it.
And let's talk about the East really quick. Obviously, Brooklyn, a lot of people think they're the team to beat, and they get off to a good start in their semifinal. But the Atlanta Hawks surprised Philadelphia, and let's talk about, I think that kind of validates what you just said, that it's kind of a wide open thing.
No, it's exactly right. I think, Atlanta comes out and shocks Philadelphia. Brooklyn, Milwaukee, I expect Milwaukee to play better. They did not shoot very well. I'm interested to see what happens with James Harden's injury. But I expect that series to go 6 or 7, especially the way that Milwaukee's played all year. Middleton didn't play very well. So we'll see. And again, Brooklyn, it's so much of Brooklyn's success is up to their health as well. And KD, Kyrie, and James Harden, little injury prone, and so if they don't stay healthy, then that series can be interesting. And so that's where I really think it's still just a jump ball in the NBA. Brooklyn, talent wise, is the favorites, but can they stay healthy? Can Blake Griffin do what he did again last night? Can he repeat that? So again, I'm on the edge of my seat. I think a lot of the NBA world is, because there's not necessarily a clear cut favorite this year.
It's amazing how easy you forget Blake Griffin's on that team until every once in a while he has a big outing, right? Yeah.
I remember I was telling Austin, I covered a Utah-Oklahoma game in Oklahoma several years ago when Blake Griffin played. And Blake Griffin, the Utes fouled him every time he touched the ball. So he made no field goals, but he was 19 of 21 from the free throw line or something like that. And so I'm sitting there, and so I raised my hand and I asked Blake Griffin the question. I said, "You ever played in a basketball game where you didn't make a shot?" And all the Oklahoma writers turned around and looked at me like I was the biggest a-hole that ever walked into their place.
That's Blake Griffin.
That's Blake Griffin. How dare you? And then, but it was funny. And he gave me some surly answer. And
you should have mistaken him for his brother. I think his brother also played for Oklahoma.
Oh, did he? He probably played several games without making a basket. That's me, my guess. But that's interesting. Hey, Brad, would you have ever thought, the days you were covering the NBA, that the Phoenix Suns, the Denver Nuggets, the Utah Jazz, and the Clippers, two of those teams are going to the Western Conference Finals? Would you ever guess that?
Was it Liddell Anderson, the old coach? It was Rod Tueller, the Utah State coach, and he used to say, "Brad, that old worm turns. That old worm can turn pretty quickly," and it made me laugh when he would do that. But yeah, I mean, when you think playoffs in Western Conference, you're thinking Lakers. You're thinking San Antonio Spurs, back in the Sonics days, Portland Trailblazers. So yeah, they just flipped the field. And it does make it interesting. I mean, this is a year in the playoffs where you don't really want to look away because you might miss the favorite winning that series. So I think it's a shot in the arm for that, and it's a shot in the arm for fans that are burned out watching the Lakers play in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's it. Well, let's go to the fourth quarter, guys, and now we're going to discuss full capacity at sporting events in Utah and the state. Brad, you covered a lot of NBA playoff games. How much of a home court advantage can the Vivint Arena be when it's full?
Well, if you talk to the players, nearly all of them say it's unreal. And the way they built the arena, where the seats come right down to the floor, and the acoustics of the building, and certainly the rabid nature of the fans, I think it's a factor. I do think that, the really great teams and great players tune it out or even feed off of that stuff. But in general, it's really difficult to get instruction. You can't shout to the other guy. Both of you have been there for Jazz playoff games. You can't shout to the guy and say, "Hey, you need to screen for me." They're playing without being able to hear each other. So I think it's a good one, and it's a lot better advantage than a lot of places. I mean, I've been in every NBA arena, at least the ones that were there when I covered them. And some of them, they made up for the sound by turning up the volume on the sound system. And you wouldn't even need the guy shouting in there in Salt Lake.
Parker, you play professional basketball and you've been playing some big venues in that. Is there such thing as a home court advantage with fans?
Of course there is. And Brad hit a little bit on the head. I had some visions of playing at places like Rupp Arena and Hinkle Fieldhouse, and playing against Arizona some rowdy, loud environments.
Even that place in Provo, right?
You're
and the Marriott Center. And you're bringing the ball up the floor as a guard, and you're trying to call a play, and you can hardly hear yourself call the play, let alone your teammates, down on the baseline. And so that is a huge factor from the player's perspective, for sure. And so I'm excited for that for the Jazz fans. I hope to get to go to a game. Every time I go to a Utah Jazz playoff game, I leave the arena, I felt like I just played. Like, that's how almost drained I am.
Shirt.
Yeah, you get the shirt and everything, which similar to I guess simulates a jersey, if you will. And man, it's such an amazing atmosphere. And I hope for our fans we keep it civil. And we want to be loud, but also be respectful and make sure we give Utah a good name. But we got to use that to our advantage, especially this time. I don't think everyone's full capacity, but we are. So let's use that to our advantage with our home court advantage.
Parker, you had a lot of experiences on the road in that, but when the crowds were big at the Huntsman Center and that, how big of a boost was that for the team?
That's also a big boost, because they help fans. The crowds can help kind of shift momentum. We used to, in sports and basketball especially, we call them like momentum plays, a charge, a block shot, a dunk, an and one, a big 3-point shot. So you could not be playing well. You could be down 8 or 9, 10 points, and then you have one of those momentum plays, and the momentum can shift on a dime, because once those plays happen, then the crowds get into it. And the Huntsman, I feel like every time I played there, the fans were just like waiting on pins and needles, waiting for something big to happen. Right. And when that happened, they erupted. And then, now we're rolling. And that's something that the home team can benefit from, for sure.
I'll ask real quick. Do you think the Jazz will have a home court advantage?
Yes, I do.
Just because of the atmosphere, the building, everything.
Well, Parker touched on it a little bit. I'm pretty sure California is not completely open yet. So I think the contrast between going back and forth between Vivint Arena and the Staples Center, again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's not open yet, will make a marked difference.
I think Billy Crystal's the only Clippers fan allowed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they make him sit really high up for some reason.
Yeah.
He hasn't made a good movie in years. He's almost who was that has-been type of guy, but I still like his movies. So
Didn't he make that one movie where he was like the radio voice of the Sacramento River Cats or something?
Fresno
Grizzlies, yeah, or something. Yeah.
When Harry Met Sally.
See, that was good too.
That was a while ago.
That one where he was a referee. What was that one? He was an NBA ref.
Wasn't that one here?
No.
Oh.
I can't remember. I saw it though.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you guys for joining us for the 4 quarters of fun. Let's wrap this podcast up with our parting shots. I'm gonna go first because I have the mic. How's that? I want to talk about Mark Eaton really quick. I have an autographed picture of Mark Eaton, and I just want to tell a quick story. When I was at the University of Utah working for the Daily Utah Chronicle, I had a side hustle where I would work for AP and get quotes from the Jazz games. And I went in the locker room once and I had my notebook from biology or something with me. And I just turned a page. And so I had this, obviously a college notebook, and I'm taking notes, and Mark Eaton grabs it and goes, "What's this? Nice notebook." And I remember, and it was very friendly. He was real funny about it, but he gave me a hard time because everybody else had reporters' notebooks and I had my biology notes or whatever in my notebook, college ruled notebook. So
you never took a note in college. Come on.
Well, that's what was weird. I must have picked the notes up from somebody else, but what was funny was that I'd actually had a notebook. And maybe that's why the pages were empty and I took it to the Jazz game to write quotes down. I don't know.
Gotta use it for something.
But that's my parting shot, is that Mark Eaton will be missed. I have a hard time believing that there was only a 7-year age difference between Mark and myself. I always thought he was about 20 years older, but hey, you live and you learn, right? But that man was a great example. And, I tell my kids this all the time, and I really believe this. And I think if you can go through life and someone tells you that you're honest and kind, or can say that about you, then you win. And Mark Eaton was honest and kind. That's all I can say about that. So, Parker, do you have any parting shots?
I do. For those avid viewers of This Is the Play Sports podcast, and for every time I'm on the show, Dirk has to make a comment about the fact that both him and I were East High Leopards.
Yes.
And so in honor of that, I've got a little pillow here.
Oh, beautiful.
East pillow, but it's a little delayed, but I want to give a shout out to the East High women's track and field team, the 4x100 group. I think there was four girls. Yeah, the event, I should say. They won state this year. They won the 5A state tournament.
Of course.
Two of the girls on the team were my cousins, and they were all but one were underclassmen. So they're coming back for a repeat next year. But want to give a shout out to the East High women's track and field team for winning state this year.
Beautiful. Brad, you've never heard me mention when we were sitting in the Huntsman Center that Parker's an East High Leopard, and I want him to shoot a 3-pointer.
This is news to me.
I went up there. I'd walk up and see Brad. I got a column for you. What? Parker Van Dyke. I said, "Can we see what he does tonight?" No, it's a great column.
Plus, his mom is really
made me look pretty good.
You were always a great entertainer. I loved it.
But Brad, what's your parting shot today?
Well, obviously Mark, a great person in every aspect, and I greatly miss him. The only other thing I'll say for these playoffs, I was thinking about it, Austin. I've been able to reel you in through the years betting on the playoffs. This goes back to when you're about 8 years old.
I remember.
I think I took you every time, but I always went against the Jazz because I could pull you in.
Yep.
We'd get milkshakes on a game. I think you ended up owing me about 30 of them or so.
At least, yeah.
But so I'm taking the Clippers. Are you going to take the bait there?
Oh, Brad, you
Yeah,
are really
yeah,
going to take the
Are you
Clippers?
going to take the Jazz?
Just for this, yes, because I think this will be fun. A little fun little discussion between you and I. So now you have my phone number. We can text back and forth on that. So I will take the Jazz. Yeah.
Give us your address, Brad. So people know where to find you.
Yeah, we got a milkshake on it now, Austin. So
Okay.
the whole
Just like
world
all
knows.
times.
Oh, hey, now it's the
Hey,
fun.
wait, don't I get a parting
oh,
shot?
yeah. Sorry, I was
crying out
all
loud, yeah.
rattled by Brad going with the Clippers. My God.
Dirk wants to go get a milkshake. He thought of milkshakes, and he was
Exactly.
And then he wants to watch
24/7, Parker. 24/7.
And then he wants to watch some Parker Van Dyke East High highlights after that. But anyway,
The UCLA one's good enough.
okay. Anyway, so my parting shot, man, I Parker touched on a little bit. Was Damian Lillard. He was just absolutely fabulous in the series against Denver. I think I've said this before on the podcast. I'm positive there's no athlete on a team outside of Utah that is loved as much as Damian Lillard is. Everything we hear about that guy, he's just supposedly just an incredible teammate. Everybody in that locker room rallies around him. He's really well respected in the community, does a lot for the Portland area, comes back to Ogden frequently to, see Weber State. I'm sure he has some kind of, tie in with the programs and some sort of supporting role, I guess. But no, Damian Lillard was fantastic. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens to him as far as staying with the Blazers, who their next coach is going to be. I'm of the opinion if he stays with Portland, he has no chance of ever winning a championship. And I think that's too bad because I think he deserves it. So it'll be interesting to see what he does the rest of it from here on out. I think this is going to be a real defining summer for Damian Lillard's career.
Good point. And I think one guy that probably doesn't like him is Terry Stotts, but other than that.
Yeah, it's all right though. Damian carried him for quite a few years. So I think
good point.
I think he, doesn't have that strong of feelings towards him.
All right. I was so excited to get to the point of our drawing to see who gets to win this beautiful University of Utah scarf. It's
something that Parker's mom would wear.
It's 105 degrees outside and people are craving these scarves, and we have one, and we're getting
If you're a soccer fan, you wear a scarf all year.
That's true. Yes.
But Brad, what do we think about soccer fans? Well, we better
alienate.
We better stop. We better stop after your Clipper remark.
RSL till I die. RSL till I freaking die. Spin the wheel, Sam. Our winner this week, Done Cute at Yahoo. All right. Thank you for your support. Whoever Done Cute is, we're happy to have your support. I'll email you right now and get your address. So thank you, Done Cute.
Guys, thanks for joining us. Brad and Parker, thank you very much for doing this on short notice and a few other monkey wrenches that came along the way, but I appreciate you guys doing it. And again, to all our listeners, thanks for supporting This Is the Place Sports. Come to our website, thisistheplacesports.com. Share the podcast with your friends. Austin, anything else before we sign off?
No, we're on social media too, so follow us there. We'll be more and more active throughout the NBA playoffs. So again, appreciate the support.
Thanks, guys. See ya.